This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by note.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the note and into hope.
Welcome back to the Hope Not Note podcast. If you listened to our last episode, which was released last Wednesday, and this is a new Wednesday, if you listened, you heard us share our hope stories from being at the CrossFit Masters Games and Legends Championship. Well, this episode is kind of special because there was someone who asked us a question at our booth that we knew we had to feature as a full episode on the podcast. And so, Dylan, why don't you explain the question that this person asked you?
Yeah, it was a great question. I was gonna do a smart question of what is it that you guys do?
Oh, you're gonna be sassy. That
was gonna be sassy. So the question was a really phenomenal question, and it was cool because we got to kind of have this back and forth dialogue. And so we wanted to bring it to the podcast, as Brandy said. But the question was, the individual was wondering, are fitness and the spirit of cheerfulness correlated? And for the background, what he was saying is, as I walk around this competition and I'm out at the hotel and I see these incredibly fit people and this community of people that love fitness, their spirit is very joyful and very chipper and very smiling and good morning and how are you and holding doors for people and acknowledging other people. Is that because they're fit? So that was the question. Brandy, why don't you start off with the answer? A little switcheroo
dunkaroo. I want to say yes, because that's what I want the goal to be, right? Like, I desire that any person who's fit and active is fit and active because they prioritize their health. They prioritize being well. And that because that's a priority in their life, they're reaching more fulfillment. And when you're more fulfilled, you're more selfless, you're more happy, joyful, and cheerful, and you're treating others well. Like, I want to say that, and I do believe that. And you could explain the science, but there's a level of science of like what working out does for like your brain and your body and like hormones and all of that, where it could really support the cheerfulness correlation.
Yeah.
So I want to say that, and I want to like leave it simply at that, but for the sake of like playing the other side, although it doesn't need to, there are people who live in the nope, right? Like, there was a time in my life, and there's been a lot of people that I know who have battled with eating disorders and being obsessively active, and they were not cheerful because they weren't looking at it as this like beautiful gift. They were looking at it as like this obsessive thing that I need to do in order to achieve this thing because they were unwell.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say every single time cheerfulness and fitness are correlated, because there's a reality that people do suffer with unhealthy obsession because of different mental illness and things like that. And so I don't want to say every single time, but I hope that most of the time it is.
Yeah. I like that we started simple, and then we're going to dive into
Well, I knew you were going to dive.
Simple and more complex.
I knew you were going to do a deep dive, and so I wanted to paint both pictures because I know you.
So it's tricky because the answer is yes and no. No and yes, right? When you are doing quote unquote fitness, from the definition of what we think of fitness being, the working out, when you're doing wall balls and burpees, you're not cheerful. Those exercise videos of people smiling when they're doing aerobics is not real. They have to force that smile on their face, because when you're exercising and you're working, you're giving yourself intentional adversity to face. And you're facing that adversity to come out on the other side, to become more resilient, to give yourself evidence that you can do hard things. So in the training aspect of fitness and exercise, while you're facing that adversity, it is a challenge to be cheerful. Which brings us to the definition of like, how are you defining fitness? And how are you the fittest person in the world. To me, we go back to Charles Darwin's theory, survival of the fittest. It's not about who can do the biggest bicep curl, who has the best bench press, the best squat. Being the fittest for survival means that you have the best ability to adapt. And if you have the ability to adapt better than other people to stressors, you're going to be more cheerful. Because things aren't going to throw you for a loop or knock you off or steal your happiness away. Happiness is a choice. Becoming hope is a choice. Being grateful is a choice. Practicing forgiveness, it's all a choice. And the better that you're able to adapt, the more fit you are. And the more fit you are, the more that you can do that, the better you cope, the more cheerful that you're going to be as an individual. So that's part of the conversation, is how are we defining fitness and why are we doing fitness? Because there's a lot of people that have six packs that aren't cheerful. There's a lot of people that you would consider to be healthy by their physical makeup that are not. So how do we start to do that? Well, I think when people are cheerful and they're fit, to me, it's a result of the fulfillment that they have, right? Because we know that the body is the temple that carries the spirit. It carries the soul. If your spirit isn't what you desire for it to be, then why would you take care of the temple that carries it? You would just kind of trash it. But if your spirit is fulfilled, your soul is fulfilled, and you understand that the thing that you carry with you is so important, you're going to take care of the body and you're going to put yourself into intentional adversity through exercising because you know the benefits of doing that to support the temple, to carry the spirit. So with the conversation that I got into with the guy was, I think that there could potentially be a relationship there, but I think the relationship is that the people that are doing things to improve their body are improving their temple because their spirit is fulfilled. And I think that's where that spirit of cheerfulness, joyfulness, gratefulness comes from, is because that understanding of the fulfillment that they have. And then we got into the conversation of like, well, how do you get fulfillment in the soul and in the spirit? And it's like, look, it doesn't have to be every single thing you do in the day fulfills you, but you should have that something that does, whether it's reading, whether it's writing, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's your actual work, whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a friend, whether it's going to an open mic night and singing at the top of your lungs, whether it's getting out the guitar, whether it's getting out the baseball, whether it's trying to dunk on an 8-foot hoop, whatever it may be, but finding that thing that gives you that little spirit of fulfillment that then makes you say, you know what, I'm gonna start making better choices. I'm gonna sleep because I care about the spirit that I carry. I'm going to work out because I care about the spirit that I carry. I'm going to look at my relationship with food and determine my thoughts on the food that I'm putting into my body and when I'm putting it into my body, because I care that I can carry the spirit with me wherever I go. So that's, to me, the complexity of the yes and no of cheerfulness and fitness. But again, those videos of people exercising with big smiles on their face, I don't know. I don't think when you're working that hard that you sit there and able to smile and like, oh, this is great. You know that it's great, but that's not the expression that you're putting on at that point. So there's a lot of levels to the conversation, but hopefully you got the takeaway that fitness is the ability to adapt to the stressors placed on it. When people have fulfilled spirits and souls, they're willing to put the work in that creates a positive impact on the temple that carries this thing that is fulfilled. They're making these choices. That all leads to the spirit of cheerfulness, joyfulness, and gratefulness.
I also want to add too, like, I think I agree, obviously, with all of that, but at a competition, at an event, you're surrounded by like-minded people and you're away from your norm. And so if your norm is whatever your norm is, like this event was almost like a vacation for people. It wasn't a vacation in the sense of sitting at the beach, but it was like that was their summer trip. And they'd been looking forward to it. They were excited. They're there to support, they're there to be active, or they're there to support their spouse, their mom, their dad, their grandfather, their aunt, like their gym owner, like whatever it may be. And so people were excited naturally because of this competition. So I'm not saying that that's like the reason why he was experiencing all of that. Like, I think it is more of what you're saying. However, I want to challenge people to not wait to be at a competition, to be joyful, to open doors for people and smile and say good morning. Like, I work from home, so I don't have the opportunity of like saying good morning to my coworkers other than Dylan, which I do say good morning to, obviously. But getting to booth, being at the convention center, I tried to say good morning to every person that walked by our booth, every convention center worker, the people in the booths near us, like, because I was around people. So I was excited. But there's also a level of like, I am fulfilled and I am cheerful and I am active. So I don't know. I just wanted to add that in because I think that like when you're in a different environment, it's easier to be cheerful because you're not in the monotony of your daily life. And so I just wanted to like encourage our listeners to be more intentional in their daily life to like keep a spirit of cheerfulness.
Break the norm.
Yeah.
Right.
Do that.
I feel like the reason that this individual was experiencing this and asking this is because we all live in environments that may not be the case. And it's easy to kind of get sucked into how other people are behaving. And that there's this one study, I forget the name of it, but they purposely put a pessimistic person as part of the team.
Oh, yeah.
And that one pessimistic person changed every single optimistic person into being pessimistic about what they were doing and the project that they were working on. We see it in the NFL, NBA, MLB all the time of players getting traded away, not because they're not physically gifted, not because they're lacking or don't know the playbook, but because they're terrible in the locker room. And that person brings down the entire culture. Because, right, like when we say environment, like what's your work environment, what we're asking is what's your work culture?
Yeah.
What's the locker room environment? What we're asking is what's the locker room culture? And one pessimistic person can bring down the entire team. Well, to me, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If the pessimistic person can bring down the team, the optimistic person can bring up the team.
Yeah.
So be that optimistic person that is changing the trajectory, that's breaking these barriers, that's bringing this cheerfulness, this joyfulness to all the different work cultures, family cultures that you're part of.
Yeah. Well, geez, I feel like this episode was a full hope story because we had such a great time there, but it wasn't. So why don't you share your hope story from?
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's going to be from
the legends.
Yeah.
So it's based on as the world gets bigger, it becomes smaller, and the different connections that were made. And before I get into that, I just want to say it was so cool to meet new people and to hear the story. So I'm going to go rapid fire with hope stories.
Love that.
One, got to meet Joshua Hicks, emergency action planner for all the major events in CrossFit, doing incredible work. He shared this story with me of how he got to that position. Got to chat with him a bit through the weekend. Was awesome. Awesome to talk with him. Two, Adam Rogers, coach at Training Think Tank, was at the competition, wrote a review for the book, got to actually meet him in person for the first time, shake his hand and just catch up and talk. And it's so cool when you meet people and you talk with them online, but then you meet them in person and they're like the same. Yeah. Like there's no facade, there's no character. It's just this is Adam, and he's an incredible human being, an incredible coach. So it was so awesome getting the chance to meet him. All right. Bigger the world gets, the smaller it becomes. We had you
also got to meet Tim Paulson too.
And I got to meet Tim Paulson, who used to live just like 30, 40-minute drive south of us. Never got the opportunity to go meet him. In Alabama, get to meet the man.
Yeah.
He's jacked.
He's awesome.
He's awesome and he is jacked. And he's cheerful. So maybe there's a correlation. So
and we had matching shoes.
And we had matching shoes. And then other than that, it was so cool the connections that were made. So Tim Green wrote the foreword to the book. This one guy stops by the booth. His wife is competing, and it's him and his daughter. He ended up going to the same high school that Tim went to. He was a freshman when Tim was a senior. We got to chat a bit, connect, hang out, and his daughter ended up wanting a copy of the book. They said that she could get anything in the center, and she wanted a copy of the book, and she was so cool.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot
so cool.
wait to see what this girl does, because she's got it.
Yeah.
She's got it. She was awesome. And seeing a teenager walking around with a book in their face instead of a cell phone, like, how refreshing is that? So that was a really cool connection. Going rapid fire, keeping it quick. Next one, an athlete that we become friends with in the regional area from being at competitions. We were there and we got to support him, cheer him on a little bit. Come to find out, I worked with one of his family members years ago, and it took us being in Alabama for that connection to come full circle. So that was incredible.
Yeah.
Blew my mind a lot. And then we met this amazing family from the LA area that we're talking with, and Brandy's talking with one of the daughters and mentioned that she loves it, the Los Angeles area, and that we used to go out there when I was working with the prehab guys, and come to find out she was actually seeing the prehab guys when she was going through an injury. And so to see that connection and be able to send the guys a picture of us together was just incredibly, it was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing because we're in Birmingham, Alabama, with the top 40 athletes in these different age divisions from around the world. And you just kind of expect that it's going to be a bunch of new relationships and there's not really a common thread. There's a common thread.
Yeah.
There's a common thread. It was so cool.
It's so cool. My hope story also comes from there, but it's kind of just in general, the word hope and how intriguing it is for people, but then also just how it makes people light up. And there was a gentleman, was he from Brazil, right?
Yeah.
There was a gentleman from Brazil who was competing, I don't know, maybe like 55, 60 or 65 plus, like one of those age divisions. But anyways, he came up to the table and he basically was like, I speak little English, so I can't read your book. And even this was like way choppier than what I'm saying. But the premise was, I speak very little English. I can't really read it, so I can't read your book, but I like your message. People need this. And our theory, because we couldn't really have the conversation with him, but our theory was that because he saw the word hope. And there was another couple that came by, they didn't even look at the book, to be honest, but they said, I want one of your shirts because we have a friend named Hope that we want to bring this back to. And then a girl came over and she said, my name is Hope. So I had to, and she was one of the athletes. I think she placed 6th in her division. She was in the 40 to 45, and I think she placed 6th. Anyways, or 44. Her name was Hope, and she had to come talk to us. And I was just so encouraged watching so many people be drawn in by the word hope, and getting to then have the conversation that hope is not this wishful thinking, but rather like you have to put in the work in order to achieve hope. And people would almost get confused, but then be like, wait, you're right. And then being able to like dive into conversations of like, you do have to put the work in to have hope. Like hope isn't this like passive thing, like you do. And so I don't know, that was just a really cool thing to connect and watch people connect. I'm just going to share 2 quick things as well. Going off of what Dylan said about the world being big to be small, we ended up meeting people from Louisiana who their son had a baseball game at the school that my best friend's dad is a principal at, like 3 days before the competition. So that was wild because like they don't know each other, but I was like, you basically know each other, which is cool. But then I also want to share that we had a beautiful opportunity to be at Legends and at the CrossFit Masters, and the people organizing it, there's a guy named Joe, a guy named Jason, I think a guy named Bob, like they ran it so well. And I got to work primarily with Jason, and he helped us out a lot. He took care of us. He worked with us to like make this happen. And that in and of itself, like phenomenal like customer service and relationships I just want to celebrate. But I also want to say that like they gave us the opportunity to send an email to the athletes prior to the competition. And, you get an email and typically it's like, "Hey, I have shirts at my booth. I have books. Come buy my book." Like it's very like pitchy. And Dylan, because he's so awesome and he cares about people before he cares about sales, decided to write an encouraging, uplifting, empowering email about how these athletes are setting an example and impacting like future generations, and how these athletes are inspirational and are legends, are leaving legacies and our hope. And we had so many athletes come up to our booth just to thank Dylan for that email. And the beautiful thing about it was that the legends actually sent it out like maybe a week after the elite CrossFit Games, where one of the athletes passed away, and we talked about it in a previous episode. And one of the athletes had shared that like they were really wrestling with that, but then like when they got the email, it helps them so much. And so I just want to encourage Dylan, because like the marketing side of me, I'm just like, oh yeah, let's just sell the book, but instead like he's like, let's care for the person. And I need that constant reminder. Not that I don't care for the person, but sometimes I get into like the work mode rather than the serve mode. And that email inspired so many athletes to the point where like one of the most like well-known older athletes, he's won 4 times, like came up to our table and was like, "I love what you guys are doing." And for like the more popular athlete to come up and say that to us both, like he said it to Dylan when Dylan was at the table by himself, and then he said it to me when I was at the table by myself. Like he came over twice. Like that was so cool. But then there were times where I was on the competition floor just like watching and saying like just chatting with the person next to me, and that they never stopped at the table, but they're like, "Yeah, I see your Hope Not Nope shirt. I remember getting an email from you guys." And like, I don't know, the word hope really empowers people in and of itself. So it was really beautiful and frankly cool to see people light up because of that, and to see the impact that the email had on these athletes who are legends and are leaving legacies.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Wow. I remember there's a lot of moments that one athlete had shared with us that she screenshotted the email and was using it each day to read, to fire her up for what she was about to go do. So it was very, very special. Grace is given. We're here to serve, provide value. Hope is learned and earned.
That's simple.
That's simple. Have a great week. And remember, every day is not a day to just be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Nope podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only, and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Nope podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.